Welcome again to the Good Viral podcast. We are so excited today. We have an amazing and special guest that we are just blown away that she is able to be with us on the podcast. If you guys know about Charity Watch, it is an organization that we feel like we really wanted to highlight because, in a sense, not to say that they are the police, but they are the fact checkers. They are the ones that are really publishing a lot of the data of what organizations, specifically nonprofits, are doing in the world and giving them a rating of how they allocate funds to help their good causes. So, in a way, they're kind of like the police of the nonprofits in a sense. But of course, we're going to have our guests kind of give us a better description of what Charity Watch really is. But we are really excited because they're a pretty large organization. They're a well-known organization, specifically in America. And so we are bringing in Laurie, who is the director. Is that right? The director of Charity Watch?
I am the executive director of Charity Watch, yes.
Great.
Awesome. Yes, the executive director. Excuse me. so that's even better. So, Laurie, tell us a little bit more about Charity Watch and how would you describe the mission and the heart of what Charity Watch does and why it's so important?
Charity Watch, our heart and soul is that we are a watchdog organization. So, there are so many websites and other sources of information about nonprofit organizations, but unfortunately, the vast majority of it consists of either charities' marketing materials that they produce themselves, like impact reports and different things that have very carefully framed and flattering financial information, or their charity trade associations kind of posing as watchdogs or posing as independent raters, but really they're just an extension of that charity's marketing materials. So it's very difficult these days for a donor to actually find independent, objective information that really tells them, okay, if I give $100, 100 euros, or whatever other currency to this particular nonprofit, how much of it is really going to help the mission that I'm intending to support? And what Charity Watch does is we try to create a level playing field for nonprofit organizations so that they're not competing for funds with bad actors within the nonprofit sector, whether those bad actors be outright fraudsters or whether they are legitimate charities that are just operating extremely inefficiently. So we very much are proud of our watchdog role.
If I understand correctly, so you've been with the company for 19 years yourself. Is that correct?
So Charity Watch, we're also a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3 public charity.
Okay.
And so, I started working with Charity Watch in 2003. I worked closely with the founder for about 16 years, and I took over the leadership position almost exactly 2 years ago.
Okay. So can you tell us? This is an interesting story for us. We've been leaning on Charity Watch a lot for information because, of course, one thing that's very important to us is to sort of share the good news about what different organizations out there are doing. For the world, for the public, and for the environment, for the planet, so forth. We love the work that you guys are doing, but how did it start? So what's the sort of origin story behind Charity Watch?
I worked with the founder, Daniel Borokoff, pretty closely for about 16 years. He was my mentor. He kind of taught me everything there really was to know about how to investigate nonprofit organizations and how to follow the cash and how to find those financial documents that you need and how to, analyze information with a very discerning eye and to not just accept reporting at face value based on what a charity wants you to think it's doing. So Charity Watch got started because our founder had actually originally worked for one of the very early rating organizations based in New York City called the National Charities Information Bureau. And he worked there for, I believe, a few years. And then when that organization kind of went under, he decided, okay, there is really a dearth of objective information about nonprofits. Keep in mind, this was 1992. This was before the internet existed.
Right.
So it was a little different back then. Not only for the general public to have a means of accessing information, but for an organization like us to actually get at that information. So our nonprofit was founded because no one was doing what we're doing. at the time. Still, no one's really doing what we're doing, but there really were very few sources of information on nonprofits. So when Charity Watch first started, everything was actually on paper. We didn't have a website. The founder was actually going down to the Attorney General's and Secretary of State's offices, making appointments to go into their files and their records, and then, spend 5 cents per page making photocopies of audited financial statements and tax filings, and then dragging them back to the office, analyzing them, and, doing a lot of stuff on paper. And then, and we still do publish a paper publication for some people who prefer to consume information that way. There are still some people who do. We have most of our information online now, but yeah, that's basically how it got started, is that there was just lack of access to information. And so he saw a void to fill. And, it's our 30th anniversary this year. He filled that niche at the time. And I think that we're still going strong, and our work is very, very much still needed.
Yeah, I think that's really a big testament to what drives Charity Watch and the passion and the resilience that you guys must have, because I don't think a lot of people today, especially younger generations, right, they don't quite get the paper pushing that you had to do before the internet happened. And that's a lot of time, a lot of effort to go into those places, look at the financial records, and it's just a lot of dedication. So I think that's a great and wonderful way to understand how Charity Watch created its foundation with that passion and dedication. So thank you for telling us that story. That's absolutely amazing to me. I feel like that's very, very, very valuable in understanding your guys' character and your approach. So fast forward to today, I'm kind of curious. What if you can think of a story, that would be even amazing. What kind of direct impact that you have seen through the activities that Charity Watch has been able to contribute?
Sure. Well, we do our own research, and we, basically analyze a lot of data. We analyze audited financial statements. We analyze tax filings of the legal entities that are within those statements, and there's often more than one legal entity with lots of money being sloshed back and forth and that kind of thing. So we publish our own investigative articles, and we also publish charity ratings, obviously. But one of the other very important things that's really central to our mission is that we help investigative journalists with their work. So there's a lot of work that we do behind the scenes that nobody ever even knows that we touched in any way, because we have journalists calling us all the time asking us, hey, can you analyze this document? I'm a journalist. I'm great at what I do, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial analyst. I don't really understand how to interpret this information. And I'm like, I do. So send it over. So we spend a lot of time kind of functioning as a resource for journalists. So, recently, over the past few months, we have, given feedback to National Public Radio here in the U.S. We're often quoted in major publications here, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Mother Jones, all different kinds of media outlets. So often, when I see us, quoted in the media, or myself quoted in the media, it's funny, we get, sometimes one or two quotes in a particular story, but I happen to know all the work we actually put into helping that journalist kind of discern what was going on, and, helping them to follow the cash and figure out how a charity was using its money or how it was operating, so that they could kind of put their whole story together. And so whenever I see those articles published, I kind of, it is validation for me and for our organization, knowing that we really are making an impact, because I'm not really sure, to my knowledge, there aren't really any other organizations out there that a journalist can just call and for free at no charge, someone with a high level of expertise will help them interpret this kind of charity financial information so that they can put together a much better and better research story.
That's really interesting. One of our objectives and what we do with GoodViral is we're basically founded on the whole idea that we believe that people can and want to do more to help others, and so we're very interested in the kind of stories that inspire people to take action, to do something. Basically, it's a very simple thing. Is that I feel like for most of my life, I've always sort of wanted to do things, and now I'm finally using my my abilities, my resources to do certain and accomplish certain things that I think are really good for people, for animals, for the planet. Through this effort, we're trying to inspire other people to do that. And yet, as we know, there are many, as you say, many organizations out there, as you say, maybe because of efficiency or just fraudulence, right, aren't doing what it is that they say that they're doing. They're just basically trying to fill their pockets. And so it's a very, very compelling and interesting thing for me what it is that you all are doing. It's sort of different, really, because most of the organizations that we're highlighting are causes that have a specific thing that they're trying to do, and what you're doing is you're making sure that everybody stays sort of clean and doing it the right way. So what I'd like to know is what are some of the things that you've seen as sort of like the ripple effects that have happened as a result of the work that you all have been doing for so long? What are some of the things that you can sort of be proud to say have happened as a result of your existence?
That's a really broad question, right?
Sure.
Because there's so many specific things I can think of that we participated in. I mean, I guess I can think of, we filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court of the United States last year to try to strengthen oversight of charities. And, a lot of the charity trade associations filed amicus briefs on the other side of the issue. Because they're very much kind of industry insiders. They're in bed with industry, and in some cases, even if something is actually good in the end for the entire nonprofit sector, sometimes insiders think, well, we're a good organization. We don't kind of want to have to deal with this additional oversight. It's kind of a pain, and we don't want people digging through our stuff. And that's well and good for the organizations out there, which is most of them. That's well and good for the organizations out there that are operating in good faith and doing great work. And I can understand how for those organizations, having to comply with additional regulation is a burden and not something they're excited about. But the fact is that's really tunnel vision. Because we're not looking at things in this very narrow way of like, oh, you're a good organization, you don't want to deal with more regulation. We're looking at the really big picture, which is that, we need to help you access as many resources as you possibly can as a good nonprofit by making sure that all of the bad actors in the sector are not siphoning resources away from you. Yeah, so that was one thing that we did last year that I'm pretty proud of. Unfortunately, the ruling didn't go our way. It went in the other direction. So, it was a very nuanced issue. So I understand. I could actually see aspects of both sides being valid and legitimate. But hopefully we'll find other ways to, reinforce some of the regulations in ways that, that kind of help the nonprofit sector on the whole. Something else I can think of is that we, Charity Watch has testified before Congress on 3 separate occasions. We were invited, basically as kind of expert witnesses to, provide context about, how specific charities were spending their money. And, some of these hearings were focused, one of them was focused on veterans organizations. And that's an area where we see a lot of abuse. And the reason I think that is because it's a 2-for-1 for scammers and for bad actors in the sector, because they not only play on people's empathy with veterans, especially injured veterans. There's a lot of very evocative visuals of people who've maybe lost a limb or people who are really struggling with homelessness due to mental illness, kind of brought on by, some of the terrible things that they saw while they were serving. So you have that aspect. And then you also have, especially in the United States, probably some of the international listeners will kind of, know about our country, is that people here tend to be pretty patriotic. And sometimes too far in that direction. I think that many people might agree, but at the heart of it, a lot of people who are patriotic here, they actually are patriotic because they are coming from a helpful place where they are proud of the good things about our country, and so that's a good thing. But the problem is that some of these scammers, they play not only on people's empathy, but they play on their patriotism. So it's sort of like a 2-for-1. It's additional way for people to guilt people into donating, like, hey, please help our veterans, and don't you feel bad for these people who sacrificed for you, and aren't you a good American, right? And so it's pretty easy to get people to open their wallets for this cause. And so that's an area where we see a lot of abuse, and that was the subject of a congressional hearing a number of years ago that we participated in.
So I find this incredibly amazing, and I didn't realize you guys were going to political measures to really help these good causes really be highlighted more, and for causes to have more regulation to basically staying authentic to their mission and purpose, right? Backpedal a little bit to when you were talking about the veterans specifically. So I find Charity Watch to be incredibly valuable to me. For those of you who are listening, if you haven't heard before, I was a caregiver for a veteran for 2 years who came back from combat and was very injured and basically was living in and out of the ER and the hospitals for those 2 years. So I'm not going to say organizations' names on our podcast, but we definitely were relying on a lot of those veteran-sponsored programs to really help in terms, especially in financial need, but also in gaining materials or supplies or just anything really that we needed to help him recover to where he needed to be to have a functioning life. And I remember having to go to Charity Watch websites almost constantly, checking out different organizations and seeing the rating and just seeing what was going on to know which organization I could rely more on. Because if they were really doing what they said they were doing, their financial statements would reflect that. And so that really helped me navigate as a caregiver to a disabled veteran to be able to help them through their medical crisis. So, just my personal story there that I really value what Charity Watch did for me. And it was very simple, just going to your website, really, as someone who is participating into these efforts, but also people who donate. It's a great way for them to see, are they actually helping the veterans? As Demian said, we're going to your website whenever we're looking at any good cause that we'd like to bring on the podcast. If they're listed on your website, we're looking at those numbers, we're looking at those ratings, and we're deciding whether they should come onto our podcast or not based off of what Charity Watch shows. So just want to put a big thank you, especially a personal thank you to what you guys do.
I'm so, so glad to hear that, because, I'm pretty passionate about what I do. And, this is no longer something to be proud of, but I'm kind of a workaholic, to be honest. And I'm sort of never really off the clock. I'm kind of always thinking about Charity Watch, and I'm kind of always, thinking about, okay, what is it that I can do next to forward our work. And so every once in a while, when we actually get some feedback from someone where they tell us like, hey, you actually really helped me or prevented me from making a terrible decision about who I donated to, or you helped me, like in your case, find a good organization to seek out for assistance, because we could see based on your rating that they were actually spending their money on legitimate programs and not just spending money on sending out a lot more fundraising letters or telemarketing calls. It's very validating for me, and it kind of reinforces my motivation to kind of keep doing what I'm doing at the pace that I'm going at, because I really do kind of think about our work all the time. And it's nice to hear that validation. So thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. It was a big help for sure, and to many people out there who are, I mean, we think about organizations in terms of how they're allocating funds and things like that, right? But we also need to consider those who are working with those organizations, much like to the story of me working with these organizations and making sure they were legit. We tend to look at a lot of the donations, which is important, but those who are actually receiving and those who are actually working with, and the belief systems that will be tied with those organizations, how I guess you could say authentic are those relationships really with that organization if their funds are not and their mission is not really being held true. So I think that's really important, because there can be a veil that's put not only across the donors, but those who are involved with those organizations as well. So I think, yeah, that's a big contributing factor to that. I have a question in terms, because we was talking to Demian a little bit about this. We have this interesting theme, especially happening in the media lately, where we have people of whatever status or whatever, you guess you could say occupation, but they're coming to organizations that tend to be for good, or they are going towards people who are advocating for certain activities, whether that be for climate change or whatever. and they tend to be trying to police the police, as it were. And so I'm kind of curious if Charity Watch has come into any kind of conflict or challenge with people kind of going, is Charity Watch actually doing what Charity Watch says they're doing?
I mean, our finances are pretty simple. So, and I think our work is kind of speaks for itself. So it's kind of pretty easy to discern what we're doing. Just it's, you can see our publication, you can see all of our ratings, and you can see the articles we published, and also just our finances are pretty simple. There are some nonprofits that they might be international and have 12 different legal entities included in a consolidated audit, and then a partnership with an international entity that's based on, United Kingdom, generally accepted accounting principles, instead of US, or, there's some organizations that are very complex, and it's much more difficult to kind of understand what's going on and how the money is being used. So for our organization, it's not extremely easy to criticize us, or based on scrutinizing our finances or kind of looking at our work. But of course, we are always the target of criticism, from charities who don't like that we're pointing out, wrongdoing or financial mismanagement or just extreme inefficiencies. And I guess, for the people listening in the United States, I don't know. I work a lot. I don't happen to watch a lot of reality television, but you can't really get away from this trope, which is all of these. Apparently, there's a trope in reality TV where people say, "I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to win." And in our work, winning is committing acts of service, is helping people, and a lot of the time for us to do our work and for me to do my job, I really have to not worry about being liked. I really have to have an internal locus of control and not an external locus of control where I'm seeking validation from the outside, because I have to have confidence in the idea that the information that we are producing is useful. And, in literature, the antagonist is the person who sometimes has a negative connotation associated with that character, right? But what does the antagonist do? The antagonist moves the plot forward. The antagonist makes the protagonist better. And so, some people view us as heroes and other people view us as antagonists. And I guess I would say either way, however someone wants to view us as the good guy or the bad guy, the truth of the matter is that we are moving the plot forward. We're making the good organizations better. And we're hopefully exposing the bad guys in a way that, prevents people from, wasting a lot of money that could otherwise go to something that's really great to help a good cause.
I'm thinking about our listeners that are maybe haven't heard of you before, or maybe want to understand better sort of what some of the thoughts behind it is, or the ideology, you might say. So I'm thinking about it this way. So if from your experience, how would you define a sort of an ideal organization that would earn a very high rating, somebody that Charity Watch could put its stamp of approval on? In other words, what kind of charity or what kind of nonprofit should people really be looking towards if they're thinking about giving money, or where they should put their support? How would you describe that?
Sure. Well, there are different organizations other than Charity Watch that are doing great work in this regard. So one of them is the Charity Intelligence Bureau in Canada. Kate Behan I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's a buddy of mine. We chat from time to time and share information. And I always tell people she's the Canadian version of me. I hope she's not offended by that. And then there's another organization called GoodViral, and they are only able to recommend, I think, 8 to 10 organizations a year. But that organization focuses on very, very deep analysis of impact of if you're trying to solve a very specific problem, like if you're trying to save more lives or improve lives in some very measurable way, not only should you find organizations that are operating efficiently, but of those highly efficient organizations, which one of those is actually making the most impact? So I want to give a shout out to some of those other really great organizations out there that are kind of doing other aspects of the work. We're doing also, Charity Watch is doing a very important aspect. We're a very important piece of the puzzle too, because we're not measuring impact in this extremely deep way, because, again, to do that, you really can only rate 8, 10, 15 organizations a year. What we're trying to do is kind of come in at the other end, and we focus primarily on being a watchdog and trying to make sure that donated dollars are not wasted. To answer your question more directly, I wanted to kind of give the larger context, but to answer your question more directly, we do have top-rated charities on our website. Our ratings are based on financial efficiency. So we take a deep dive into charity audited financial statements, which is something I believe none of the other raters do. In fact, I know that none of the other raters do it, other than possibly GiveWell and the Charity Intelligence Bureau, and another organization, I think Animal Charity Evaluators, takes a deeper dive out in California. And then we analyze all of the tax filings. We follow the cash, and if we determine that a charity spends at least 75% or more of its budget on programs and keeps its fundraising down to $25 or less to raise $100, meets our transparency benchmarks and our governance benchmarks, that's what qualifies a charity for top-rated status. We do have a grading scale that might not be so familiar for international people, that might have more of like a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or that kind of thing. We have letter grades. So in the United States, we use letter grades to grade papers and people in school. So that's what Charity Watch has adopted. So we have A+ to F ratings. So our very top rated charities are A+ charities. They're not only able to spend 90% or more of their budgets on programs, and keep their fundraising down to, I believe it's $10 or less to raise $100. But they're also able to meet those really important governance benchmarks and transparency benchmarks.
Thank you for the explanation. Yeah, I didn't think about, as an American, right? I don't think about how people grade differently in different countries. So I think that's a great point.
Right.
I was definitely not an A+ student. I'm more familiar with the C's and B's, but yeah. I know a lot of people may have heard of Charity Watch before because you're such a popular organization, for sure, compared to most rating organizations out there, for sure. But when it comes to people getting more involved with you or following you or just kind of getting more information on a regular basis, what's the best way for them to get involved? Is there a social media channel or somewhere on your website?
Sure. We have a lot of different ways. The first thing is we do put out currently a monthly email newsletter. We're trying to ramp that up to weekly. But on our homepage at charitywatch.org, if you want to drop your email address to us, we'll add you to our monthly email mailing list. And typically in that mailing list, we include our charity rating updates. We include investigative articles that we've written, and occasionally a video from me, kind of, yapping about some topics for anyone who wants to watch it. And then, also we have a LinkedIn page. We've got a Facebook page. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. So really, there's a great number of ways to keep in touch with us on social media. But of course, visiting us at charitywatch.org, that's where you can get the most comprehensive information about our latest, most up-to-date charity ratings. And also on our blog, you can see our investigative work in real time.
I think a lot of people who are listening are probably going to be very interested in that investigative work. So everyone who's listening, if you love getting those kinds of articles, do go to their website and sign up for their mailing list. I'm going to go there right now, actually. After this, I'm going to go and sign us up for that, because I think that's great. I follow you on Twitter, so I do suggest, because you're very active on Twitter. So those of you who want to know Laurie more, you can check her out on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for being on our podcast, Laurie. We really appreciate all the wonderful information and stories you've given us. It's a great inspiration, and we're going to be continued fans rooting for you as you guys go through your journey.
Well, I'm so glad, and thank you for highlighting Charity Watch today, and for helping me celebrate our 30 years of helping people to make
awesome.
more informed giving decisions. So thanks for having me.